amazing people. Welcome to I Am Beloved podcast. My name is Bernice Rivera, founder of I Am Beloved, and I am super excited that you have decided to take this journey with me as we navigate towards learning how to forgive ourselves, heal ourselves, and love ourselves through God's eyes. Stay tuned because we have an amazing episode up next. Hey, what's good? I Am Beloved fam. This is it, y'all. Season finale of the Love Talk. It's been real, guys. It's been real. We've had some really good episodes where we've talked all about love. We've talked the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today, if I can be honest, it's going to be the most vulnerable and the most open and honest podcast or episode, I apologize, that I've had and that I've made thus far. Tonight's episode is called, and it's titled, The One Whom My Soul Loved and Lost. This episode is very, very personal to me. It's very deep in my heart because I'm going to be talking about my last relationship. I'm going to be talking about the love whom I once had and I lost. So this season during the Love Talk, I hope that you guys have enjoyed it thus far and you've learned some pointers, you've learned things to do, what things not to do. Like I said before, it's funny because I think that people might think like, why should I listen to Bernice? Why should I listen to her, right? She's about to be 33 years old. She's not married. She's never been married before. And you're right. Why should you listen to me? Why should you listen to me, especially when it comes to love, when obviously whatever I've been doing hasn't worked out. But I hope that you can understand, that you can see that through my journey, through things that I've gone through my life experiences, my life as a pastor's kid, my life as now a youth pastor, my life as a woman who believes in love and is a hopeless romantic, and just throughout my life experiences and everything that I've learned by reading and by going to counseling, which I truly and wholeheartedly believe in counseling, I really hope that through all of that, you are able to learn something that's going to be valuable to your life, that's going to be valuable to your family, to your friendships, and to your relationships. So let's dig into this. This is the first time I'm talking about my last relationship. I know that for those of you who have known me for a while, everyone pretty much has questioned and has asked, but Bernice, what happened? Like, you guys looked so happy together. I thought he was the one. I thought you guys were going to get married, and so did I. So did I. Life has a way of working things out, of things happening along the way, of growing pains that we must all endure and go through, and I think that was one of them. So let's get started, guys. My ex-boyfriend, I met him in December of 2019, and just to give you guys some background information, before that, I had been single for 6 years. And I've spoken a little bit about this as well. But before that, I had been single for 6 years. I had a very toxic relationship when I wasn't in the Lord, when I was just wilding out in the world and, just acting crazy out there. And I had a relationship when I was out there in the world, and it wasn't godly. It was super toxic, and it wasn't going anywhere. And then when I finally surrendered to God and gave my heart to Jesus Christ and returned to the Lord, returned to my Father's love. I used to pray all the time. I remember praying all the time and asking the Lord, God, I want you to send me someone who's a man after your own heart, a man after God's own heart. I know like in the Bible, they described David as being a man after God's own heart, that even through all of his failures and difficulties, he was a man that loved the Lord with all of his heart and everything that he had. And I remember asking the Lord for that specifically, a man who was humble. And also, I remember telling the Lord all the time, God, I don't want to date. And it's not that I'm against dating. It's not that I'm against being in different relationships. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. But for me personally, like I was tired of just being in toxic relationships. I was tired of just I didn't want to waste my time. And I specifically told the Lord, God, I want them. My desire is that for my next relationship to be the man that I end up marrying. So fast forward 6 years single to December of 2019. I met my ex-boyfriend. I met him through Facebook. Facebook should give me a free promotion ad now. They should become one of my sponsors. But anywho, I met my ex-boyfriend on Facebook. We became Facebook friends. He added me. I had no idea who he was, but I started like looking through his page, and I realized that he was like a Christian rapper, and I was like, okay, that's dope. Like, so he requested me, and he had just messaged me like, hey, I hope you can check out my new music, things like that. And that's pretty much it. Like we were Facebook friends. We became Facebook friends in about 2018, and then we were Facebook friends for a whole year. He would like my pictures here and there, I would like his, but that's pretty much about it. It wasn't until about a year later in like December of 2019 where we actually really started talking. He would send me messages, like encouraging text messages or just encouraging messages, because he didn't have my phone number at that time. Just through Facebook, he would DM me and slide into the DM and just send me encouraging messages. And one time I was going through a lot and he didn't know. I didn't really tell anyone, and he just wrote to me and he was like, hey, God put you in my heart to pray for you, and I just want to let you know that like I was praying for you last night, and that whatever you're going through, like God has your back. And it just, from that moment, it really touched me, and it's really touched my heart. But of course, listen, like I've been serving the Lord my entire life. Like if there's one phrase that I know is wolf in wolves in sheep's clothing. So I was like, nah, I'm like, yeah, this guy's probably trying to just play me, and he's like giving me Bible verses and sending me Bible verses and telling me that he prayed for me when he really didn't. He's just trying to see what's up. Like he's just trying to slide into the DM. So I kind of like ignored him for a few days, and then I felt in my heart to reach out, and we started a conversation. And we were just sending voice notes here and there on Facebook and stuff like that. But once we started talking, like we really clicked. He really seemed like he genuinely did love the Lord, and he was just a really good friend to talk to. So a few days later, we finally decided to actually call each other and FaceTime each other. And I remember the first time that we FaceTime, and that was the moment I think where I was like, wow, like there's something really different about this guy. There's something that I've never really experienced or seen before, even in Christian guys. And I've been around Christian guys basically my entire life, growing up a pastor's kid. But the first time we FaceTime, the first thing that he did was, when we got on the phone, he asked me, hey, if it's okay and you don't mind, I would like to pray with you at the beginning of our conversation, at the end of our conversation, just so that God could be in control and he could be in the center of our conversation. And at first I was like, what? Like, who is this guy? Like, where did they get him from? And I was just super shocked. Like, I've never even seen any other Christian guy like be genuinely that spiritual just on a phone call or a conversation. So that really, grabbed my attention, and we started talking. And like I said, like from the beginning, we clicked, and it wasn't just superficial things like talking about the weather or anything like it was real life conversations, talking about our hopes, our dreams, our goals, where we hope to be in a few years, what's our calling, what do we feel like God has called us to do and called us to be. And I was honest with him, and I told him, I said, I know that I have a pastoral calling. Since I was little, they've told me that I have a pastoral calling. I ran from it for many, many years, but I had the calling. And he was like, man, that's awesome. Like he was pretty supportive of it, throughout our whole relationship. He was very supportive of it. He respected the pastoral calling a lot, and he knew that it was a great weight to carry, which I appreciated that, because a lot of people nowadays want to call themselves pastors, but they don't know how hard it is. They don't know, everything that you have to go through to be a pastor, right? So we started FaceTiming. That was in probably around January of 2020, because like I said, we started talking December 2019, and then January 2020 is when we started FaceTiming every day, and it became more often. We would FaceTime for 3 hours, then 4 hours. Like, it was insane. Every time that we would FaceTime, like, I could just tell how genuine he was about his love for God. And, he would say, hey, like, would you like to study the Bible together? We could do like a little Bible study on FaceTime together. And the reason, and I totally skipped this part, but the reason why we were FaceTiming is because he lived somewhere else. Like, it was a long distance relationship. So he lived pretty far away. We were just getting to know each other through FaceTime. So we would FaceTime a lot. We would spend many hours on FaceTime talking about life. I remember he got me a book for us to read together, which was the five love languages. And it was just like something I had never seen or expected or from anyone. Like, he went out of his way to buy this book for us, mail it to me so that we could read it together. So it just blew me away. The months went by, January, February went by, and then finally we decided that we wanted to meet, and we wanted to finally meet in person, face to face. So I knew that March was coming up. At that time, I was still a teacher in high school. I was teaching at a high school, and spring break was coming up, and we made the decision to meet each other face to face and in person. We decided to meet in Tennessee, which was halfway for him and halfway for me. And of course, I took my little cousin, which at the time she was 19. I took her with me because I was like, listen, like, first of all, I don't know if this guy is going to end up being a psycho or if he's going to be catfishing me. But second of all, which is the most important reason, is that I'm a woman of God. I'm a woman of God. When you serve the Lord, when you're in ministry especially, you have to be very careful about taking care of your reputation. It's not good for you to, be seen alone with a guy by yourself that you just met. Like, it's for me, you have to be very careful, because for me personally, I want to set the example for my youth. I'm a youth pastor, so I've always had that in mind, that I want to be very cautious. First of all, I want to protect myself, my reputation. I want to protect my heart, and not fall into temptation. Like, you don't want to play with the devil. You don't want to put yourself in situations where are not good for you, right? So I went with my cousin. I wanted to protect myself. I wanted to protect his reputation. I wanted to protect my reputation as a woman of God, and protect myself, right? Not not put myself in tempting situations that I didn't need to be. And also, just in case, like Criminal Minds or CSI, I don't want to end up on the news because of a crazy person, right? So we decided to meet in March of 2020. And what's crazy is that I felt like God was aligning everything. Like God was literally aligning everything for us to meet. Because during that time, we were still getting to know each other. We weren't official yet, and I was praying and he was praying. We were both praying for confirmation. We were both believing and asking God to reveal to us if this relationship was of God. Because in everything that we did, it was very important for us to honor God and to fulfill God's will for our lives, right? That's always been number one. And that always was number one in my life as a single person and in our relationship and in his life as well. It was always number one to follow God's will for our life. We ended up meeting in Tennessee, and it was literally, guys, when I tell you God was aligning everything, it was because literally we met, and 2-3 days later, the pandemic, COVID-19 hit, and everything was shut down. Like nobody could travel. Everybody had to be inside of their homes. Everybody was on lockdown. There was curfews. So God aligned everything that we could literally meet like 3 or 4 days before the shutdown. Once we met each other in person, it was like I knew him my entire life. We talked, we prayed together. That was one of the first things he wanted to do. He wanted to pray together. We read the Bible together. We studied the Word of God. We had some challenges, but we worked through them. And I think we just, at that point, we kind of knew like, this is a person that I want to explore a future with. This is a person that could be this could potentially be the person I end up marrying, because there were so many things that were just aligning, and the way that we were growing spiritually together, every conversation that we had, God was the middle and God was the center of every conversation, every prayer that we had. When we come back home, I end up, from Tennessee. What's crazy is that I drove 10 hours to Tennessee, and he ended up having to drive 10 hours to meet up in Tennessee. So we end up, getting back to our respective destinations. I get back to Orlando, and I can't remember if it was the week before I met him in person or the week after I met him in person, but throughout the entire time I was praying for confirmation. God, confirm if this is the man that you have for me. God, confirm if this is, the relationship you have for me. I don't want to date around. I don't want to, waste my time. And like I said, I can't remember if it was a week before or after, but I remember distinctively, and I don't dream. Like, I'm not a person that dreams. I'm not one of those persons like, oh, can you interpret my dream? And I had this dream that this, and no, like that's not me. So I had a dream, which was super odd. And in my dream, I remember my ex-boyfriend before my last relationship. I remember in my dream, he took out a ring and he got on one knee and proposed to me. And as he's proposing to me and as he's getting down on one knee, and it was like slow motion, right behind him was the guy that I was talking to, the one that I had ended up driving to Tennessee for. And in my dream, he was behind my ex at that time. My ex had proposed in the dream, and he was standing directly behind him. And in my dream, I remember looking at him and looking down and saying, and then looking directly at the guy that I was talking to, that I was asking God for confirmation for. I remember looking at him and then instantly knowing, like, that's my future. And I remember saying to my ex in my dream, no. Like, he's like, will you marry me? And I said no, because at that moment I understood that the man that God had for me for my future was the one I was looking at, the one that I was getting to know, that I had met on Facebook, that I had driven to Tennessee for. He was my future. He was going to be the one that I ended up marrying. And again, I was still praying for confirmation, and that was my first sign. That was my first confirmation, I feel like, in my heart from God, that he was the man that God, had for me. That was in probably March, the end of March, because we ended up meeting in person in the beginning of March. That was probably towards the end of March or the middle of March that I had that dream. A little bit later on, in April, and again, we were still praying for confirmation. In April, everything was shut down. COVID-19 had shut everything down. Everybody was in curfew. And I remember that I decided to have a youth service through Zoom. And for the youth service, I invited, one of my other friends had told me about this girl that preaches, that she's fire, that God uses her, that she's a prophet of God, and God uses her in a mighty way. And my friend had told me, like, hey, you should really invite her to preach to your youth service. And I was like, okay, I'm down for that. Like, she sounds like she's great. Like, I'm going to invite her. I didn't personally know her. And I had never heard her preach at that point, I believe. Or maybe I had, but I think I had heard her preach, but I didn't know her personally. Like, we weren't friends or anything like that. And then for the youth service, I remember inviting the guy I was talking to. I was like, hey, we're gonna have a youth service. You should join us on the Zoom call. It's gonna be great, yada yada. And he's like, okay, I'll join you guys. I remember that she preached, and we had many different youth on that call. We had youth that didn't know the Lord, youth that had, kind of walked away from God. We had all types of youth on that call. And I remember at the end, some of the youth cameras were off, some of them were on, and you could see their names at the bottom, but that's pretty much it. And then I remember that God started using this woman of God. God started using her, and she started prophesying to my youth, to different youth members. And the things that God was using her to say, like, I knew it was God. There was no doubt in my mind that it was God, because she didn't know any of them, but I knew them. And God was using her to say things that only I knew, because they had confided in me and God knew. So I was like, wow, like, God is really using her right now. And then I remember towards the end of it, she turns to me in the Zoom call and says, Bernice, and she saw, because my name said Bernice at the bottom, she said, Bernice, God is showing me that you're praying for confirmation, and you're praying for confirmation for you're praying for confirmation about like a relationship with a guy that's on this Zoom call. She said his name, and she started prophesying to him as well. And she started telling him, like, why do you think that God placed you next to her? Because God has a special calling for your life too. And then he said, God used her to speak to me and say, Bernice, you're praying for confirmation, and thus says the Lord, you guys are a good thing. This relationship is a good thing, but it's up to you both. It's up to you both to hold on to the promise of God and walk towards the fulfillment of this promise for your lives together. So at that moment, I understood very clearly that our relationship was a good thing, that God saw our relationship as an amazing thing. But at the end of the day, it was up to us to be able to believe in that word, to be able to believe that we were a good thing, and to be able to walk towards that promise of God for our lives in order for that promise to be fulfilled. At that moment, after God spoke those words to us, I knew that this was the person that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Mind you, I already knew it. I felt it. I prayed for it. There were so many signs that this was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. He respected me in every situation, in every moment when we spoke. He brought me closer to God. And if there's a person that brings you closer to God, you hold on to them. Hold on to them, because there's nothing more beautiful than being able to serve the Lord with the person that you love, right? And I had my dream. I felt it in my heart. And now, God using this prophet to confirm it was just like the cherry on top. I want to make a parenthesis here. I want to make a parenthesis here and a side note. Like I said, the title of this episode is The One Whom I Loved and Lost. So obviously it didn't work out. And you might be asking yourself, oh, but God confirmed their relationship. Like, God confirmed the relationship. How could it possibly not have worked, right? And I want to be clear with you guys, and I want to talk to you guys about the ways in which God can confirm, right? Somebody the other day asked me, Bernice, how do I know that God has confirmed my relationship? Like, should I wait for a prophet to come and speak before the church? What should I do? How do I know? How can I receive confirmation that this is the person that God has for me? And what I want you to understand is that God can speak in many forms. God can speak through dreams. God can speak through visions. God can speak through prophets. God can speak to your heart. It can be a silent whisper. It could be something that you just feel in your heart, right? In the Bible, God spoke in many different ways. He spoke privately and he spoke publicly. For example, when he spoke to Abraham and he told him, leave your country and leave your people behind and go to the land in which I'm showing you. He spoke to Abraham privately. Also, when God spoke to David, God chose the prophet Samuel to bring a message to David, to tell him that he was going to be anointed to be the new king. So God spoke through prophets. So there's different ways and different forms that God can speak, right? The problem is God can speak, but it's up to us to listen. The Bible says that faith without works is dead. Prophets can come to your church every Sunday and prophesy to you that you're going to be a preacher, a pastor, a teacher, a worshiper. But if you don't believe in that promise, or you don't hold on to that promise and you don't receive it, and you don't do everything necessary to prepare yourself to walk in that promise, then honey, it will never happen. It will never happen. People can say whatever they want to say. God can promise you what he has for you. God can show you and tell you what he has for you. But if you don't hold on to that promise, if you don't believe in it, and if you don't walk accordingly or prepare accordingly, then it will never happen. The second problem with that is God can speak, but we have free will at the end of the day. I know, and this is something that I'm going to say, and I'm very, very, very passionate about. I know for a fact, 100% fact, that my relationship with my ex-boyfriend, my last relationship that I just had, I know for a fact that was a godly relationship. I know for a fact that God had confirmed our relationship. There's no doubt in my mind. But at the end of the day, we have free will. At the end of the day, we need to believe in that promise. If you don't believe in what God has spoken to you, it will never happen. It will never come to pass. And that's exactly what happened to us. People could sit here all day and tell me, oh no, Bernice, acted too rushed. She was too rushed. She wasn't thinking. She didn't pray enough for this. Listen, ain't nobody know what went down. Just us and God. We literally saw God move like never before in our relationship. We grew closer to God through our relationship. We were able to heal through different traumas of life and childhood that we had through our relationship and through God's help, because the Holy Spirit was constantly the center of our relationship. So no one can tell me otherwise. But at the end of the day, like I said, God can speak, but it's up to us to listen. And God can speak, but we have free will. Let's say, for example, those ministers, worshipers, evangelists that are Christian, that love the Lord and ended up getting married. Don't you think that they prayed for confirmation? Don't you think that they had confirmation from God, that they felt confirmation from God in their hearts? But 2 years, 3 years later, they end up getting a divorce, or 2 or 3 years later, the husband ends up cheating on his wife. So what, are we going to say, no, God never spoke? God never spoke? No, God did speak. But at the end of the day, we have free will. God can say this relationship, this marriage is a good thing. But like I said, it's up to us to believe in that and hold on to that faith. We have free will. God did not make us robots. So if we screw things up, then we screw things up. But we can't say, oh, well, God then didn't speak because they ended up getting in a divorce. Oh, God didn't speak because he ended up cheating on her and leaving. No, we can't say, because who are we to say when God speaks and where God doesn't? Especially when we're not a part of that relationship, when we don't know the prayers that person is doing, that relationship, that couple is doing together. We don't know. Fast forward, after about a year together, things were going amazing. He met my family, I met his, and they literally fell in love with him. My parents are not easy people to please, and they definitely fell in love with him. I remember the first day that my dad actually met him and he walked in through the doors. I was, in the kitchen cooking something, and then I hear my dad and him, and mind you, he only spoke English. So my dad is over here trying to speak his terrible English, and I'm over here in the kitchen with my mom, and I just literally 10 minutes into their conversation, I hear my dad cracking up, like genuinely cracking up. I know my dad's faking it and when he's real, and he was just cracking up. So I was like, oh my God, like my dad really likes him. So I was really, really happy about that too. And like I said, God was just aligning everything. And every day, we were growing mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And about a year later, after we were together for a year, in January of 2021, we had a conversation where, he confirmed to me that he felt like God confirmed that it was time for us to start planning for our future together. And, we prayed about it, and we decided to set our wedding date for February 26th of 2022. Now that I think about it, I'm like, that one time that I almost got married. So February 26th of 2022, we had decided and we had set the date for us to be married. Over the next 11 months, our relationship was tested and tried from every different angle and every different form. There was misunderstandings between us. There was moments of doubts, of uncertainty, there was just a lot going on. And I remember that he came to spend Christmas with me and my family, our first Christmas together, in December of 2021. After that, everything pretty much went downhill from there. I think during that time, we were both just going through our individual issues. Even though throughout our relationship, we had different issues going on in our own lives, in our lives as a couple, we would always run to God and then we would run to each other. But this time it was different. This time, I think that he just became very overwhelmed. Like, we were both overwhelmed. Like I said, there was things going on in our lives, our families, our workplaces. Things became very difficult for us. And instead of us talking through it, instead of us talking through our problems, working through it, we were pointing fingers at each other. We were misunderstanding each other, and it kind of just went downhill from there. And I think the turning point was when I began to realize and I began to feel like I wasn't his safe place anymore. He was a type of person that, overanalyzed many things. And when he was feeling very overwhelmed with life,
he would tend to, close off. He would close off, and just, be within himself, be within his own thoughts, like, kind of shut everyone away, push everyone away, and including me. But like I said, we usually would work through it and we would, come back together and continue building. But this time it was different. I felt like a wall had built up around us, and he was just going through so many different things in his life individually. And I think that, it got to the point where fear was screaming louder than faith, where the doubts that he had and the insecurities that he had, were paralyzing him to the point where, he stopped believing in us. He stopped believing in our future together. He stopped believing that it would ever come to pass. And the problem was that I was trying to get back in, but I still felt like he was closing me out. And I kept hoping and I kept praying for a life by his side. But he was so consumed within his inner battles and doubts that we slowly began to drift away, until it got to the point where we were on two completely different pages. And
there's no doubt in my mind that he loved me. There's no doubt in my mind that he loved me. There's no doubt in my mind that I loved him. Like, when I say that we knew we were meant for each other, we knew it. And it's crazy, and people might not understand, but I wrote these posts that said, when you know you found the one. How do you know you found the one? And then I put, when you blah blah blah, like when you blank. And I wrote those posts inspired by our relationship. I wrote those posts inspired by him, because literally I had never experienced this type of love where you can literally look at a person and just see the amazing work and the amazing future that God has for that person. Like, I could literally look at him and just envision and clearly see the amazing man of God he was and the amazing man of God that he was going to be. I could look at him and see the amazing father he was going to be, the amazing husband he was going to be. Like that, I had never experienced that ever with anyone. And I had no doubt in my mind that he was the one that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And he would always tell me, I don't doubt whether you're the woman for me. I doubt whether I'm the man for you, because again, I think that we both had trauma growing up in our lives, but I think that the trauma that he had got to the point where it used to just paralyze him and he got to the point where he felt like he couldn't fight with it anymore. He couldn't fight his inner demons anymore. And that's when we ended up drifting away, because I was still believing, I was still hoping, I was still, pressing towards, our wedding date, pressing towards being married and having a future together. And he was just closed off within himself. And it got to the point where I couldn't hold on anymore. I couldn't fight alone anymore. It was then in April of 2022 when, I decided to give him a call and have a conversation, and I decided to end our relationship. I questioned it a lot after I made that decision. I questioned it a lot, and if I tell you that I don't question until today, that's a lie. There are times when I still question my decision, but one thing that I have learned and one thing that God has, revealed to me is that you can't sit around waiting for somebody to be ready to spend the rest of their life with you. Like, you can't spend the rest of your life waiting for something to happen when you never know if it's going to happen, right? Like, there's a difference, and I tell this to everybody. There's a difference between, I always say, work towards your healing. right? I've heard people say this, wait until you're healed to be in a relationship. I don't necessarily believe that. Like I always say, I believe healing is a journey and not a destination. And I believe that throughout our entire life, we're going to continue to heal. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to overcome things. But the beautiful thing about it is that when you can find friends, when you can find family, when you can find a spouse or a partner that is willing to hold your hand and walk towards your healing together, you know, whether that's going to counseling, which I am a number one believer in counseling, you know, like if you're able to find that person to hold your hand and walk towards healing together, then you found everything that you need. You found everything that you possibly need. And I think that that's what, you know, that's why we ended up drifting away, because we both had trauma and I was willing to work through it together. And it's not that he didn't want to, and I don't blame him for anything at all. Even till today, I don't blame him for anything. I just think that fear is a paralyzing force. I think that, you know, he got to the point where he was listening to the enemy's voice and in other people's voices, you know, in his life. So much that it got to the point where he started doubting his ability to be able to be a husband, his ability to be able to be there for me emotionally, provide different things like that, that it ended up causing us to drift away. That was the end. I remember that was the last time that I spoke to him in April of 2022. I ended up, you know, trying to reach out to him, but it didn't work. And if I sit here today and if I am very, very honest with you guys, I want you to understand that I don't blame him for anything. And if I'm honest with you, I still do love him very, very much. I know that he's a man of God. I know that he is a wonderful person. He has a beautiful heart. He's ambitious. He has amazing things going for him. He's an amazing Christian rapper. I know that he's amazing and that he's gonna make someone very, very happy one day. And I don't know what the future may hold, but all I know is that I could not wait for him to be ready to become my husband and to choose me to be the woman that he wants to spend the rest of his life with. So I want to encourage you guys, even though, and this is when God confirms and it doesn't work out, even though it didn't work out for me, doesn't mean that it's not going to work out for you. Doesn't mean for you to stop believing in love. Even though things have not worked out in your life, in your past relationships, trust God. Trust God with all of your heart, and He will order your steps. I am a hopeless romantic, so I have not given up on love. But my priorities are different now. Before, I remember, you know, just hoping and dreaming of the day I would become somebody's wife. And now I hope and dream about fulfilling the calling of God over my life. I want to go all in on I Am Beloved podcast. I want to go all in preaching the word of God, sharing the love of God with everyone, bringing healing to the brokenhearted, which is our mission of I Am Beloved. And I know for a fact that as I do that, God will bring the person that is going to chase after God with me, and that we're going to be able to be a kingdom couple together. So my singles out there, don't lose hope. Keep praying, keep believing. God has someone special for you. I love you all. Thank you for joining me in the season finale of the Love Talk. See you in our next season. Los amo. Thank you for listening to I Am Beloved podcast. I hope you enjoyed yourself and that you are walking one step closer to your healing. See you next time. Adios.